standing here near the Valley of Death, and today's video is going to be on the Bucktails at Gettysburg, the 13th Pennsylvania Reserves. Now, on July 1st, the 13th Pennsylvania Reserve reached the Pennsylvania-Maryland border, and they were unaware at that time that a great battle had commenced here at Gettysburg, Pennsylvania. As they neared Gettysburg along the road, rumors began filtering in from the lines as wounded and couriers started heading backwards. Some of the rumors were that General McClellan had been reappointed to command, and that he had 60,000 troops that were coming following him here to Gettysburg. Because of the immense fire and smoke of the battle, some delirious soldiers that had turned and ran were heading in that direction, and one even mentioned seeing General George Washington riding on a horse, a white horse. So of course these rumors were false, and they were probably due to panic of the moment. And the Bucktails began their march toward Gettysburg. Finally, as they got near into Gettysburg, a true rumor finally reached their lines, and that had been that the Union Army had been routed, General Reynolds had been killed, and the Union Army was in retreat, heading back toward the town of Gettysburg. Now, one time, this hit close, because at one time before, the Bucktails were under the command of General Reynolds. On July 2nd, they arrived on the Baltimore Pike, which is today's Route 97, and they were placed in reserve on Powers Hill, and Powers Hill would be in the distance over here. They were placed there in reserve on July 2nd, and they were a part of Samuel Crawford's Pennsylvania Reserve Brigade. Now, the battle here at Little Round Top commenced around 4 p.m. After Longstreet made his counter march and then began his attack of Devil's Den and Little Round Top. Now, Daniel Sickles, that was in the position over here in the distance, moved his corps forward without orders and took a line of battle among the, near the Emmitsburg Road and the Peach Orchard. Sickles' movement, of course, created a huge gap in the line, and by the time General Meade had received word that Sickles had done this, it was too late, because Lee had already begun to engage the 3rd Corps along the Emmitsburg Road with his artillery, and it wasn't that long after that that the infantry would become involved as well. So the Bucktails from Powers Hill began to move. And the way they moved from Powers Hill up the Granite Station Schoolhouse Lane, which we did a video earlier on the old Granite Station Schoolhouse. So they passed that, and then when they got to the Taneytown Road, they made a left and turned south onto the Taneytown Road. And they proceeded south along the road until they hit a farm lane, which led to the position behind where we're looking at now, Little Round Top. Now, they were at the rear of the column, and they were deployed in line to fill up a hole that was left blank by Colonel Sidney Burbank and Colonel Hannibal Day's U.S. regulars. Now, they were here in the distance on Little Round Top in this position as Confederate brigades of Joseph Kershaw, George Anderson, Paul Jones Semmes, and W.T. Walford destroyed Union brigades consisting from Burbank Day and Jacob Schweitzer over here in the wheat field. At that time, they were ordered forward. Union forces from the wheat field soon began to retreat back in this direction here, and soon passed the Bucktails as they advanced from Little Round Top into the Valley of Death. Now, reserves rushed down into the Valley of Death, and at that time, there was bad fighting to their left in the Devil's Den area. Colonel McCandless decided at that time he was going to shift the brigade, making them the left flank, which put them under even heavier fire. They then came to this stone wall right here in front of us, and they encountered the 1st Texas and parts of the 5th Georgia. And though they had the safety of the stone wall, they knew that they had to clear out the woods that sat here just to their west in front of them. So they got a small group together to reconnoiter this woods, and this woods is of course part of the Rose Farm woods. They got a small group together to reconnoiter in this area, and they began going forward. And after a few minutes, not hearing any musketry, Colonel Charles F. Taylor approached that small group and asked them why they weren't firing. And they replied to him, "Colonel, because the force in front of us is overwhelming, and sir, you need to take cover." And just as they were warning him to take cover, a mini ball struck him in the chest and killed him instantly. Now this action ended, and what's so important about it this action here, this charge by the Bucktails, pretty well ended any further advances on Devil's Den and Little Round Top. And of course, Colonel Charles F. Taylor was killed nearby here today where their monument sits. Now the monument was built in 1890, and of course it has a dressed bucktail soldier with the bucktail in his hat here, standing here, and it gives has the Pennsylvania plate on it, the nickname of the regiment, Bucktails. On the right side of the monument, it gives all the different actions that they took place in, and then on the left side, it talks about the 13th Pennsylvania Reserve Bucktails, 1st Rifles of 42nd Infantry, when they were mustered in June 11th, 1861. And their muster out date on June 11th, 1864. So again, this has been the Bucktails at Gettysburg on Gettysburg Battlefield Facebook. Okay, we just did a video on the Bucktails, and we're looking at the back side of the Bucktail Monument. And I also wanted to point out here that there is a witness tree near this monument, and that would be this one right here. This is a witness tree. It's approximately 165 years old, and it stood here near and was a witness to the action of the Pennsylvania Bucktails as they charged across the Valley of Death into this western wooded area of the Rose Woods to try to clear it out on July 2nd of 1863. This is again one of the witness trees that was here during the battle, and I thought I'd add this into the Bucktails video. This is Witness Trees on Gettysburg Battlefield Facebook.